So, well, thank you very much for being here. And yeah, I'm going to talk about this experiment that I've done in collaboration with Nausicaa Pusculus in UCL. And to most of you, this is going to sound very familiar because the methodology that I've been using for this study is more or less the same that I use for the experiment in my PhD. So the plan is quite straightforward. So I'm going to talk a bit about the motivation that I had to conduct this study. Then I'm going to talk a lot about the experimental design, then participants, and then results and tentative discussion. And please, with that, help me because I have to write now the article. So if something doesn't make sense or you have ideas, suggestions, whatever, you are very welcome to share with me your thoughts. And since in the experimental design, things will, well, they might get a bit confusing at some points. If you don't understand something or you just want to ask in the middle of the talk, please feel free to do so. So, motivation. Okay, if there is something that theories of irony agree on, and there are not many things that they agree on, is that ironic utterances involve the expression of an attitude, one that has been normally characterized as critical, derogatory, mocking, skeptical, or negative. And this seems to be a key feature of irony, probably the most important key feature of irony. But taking this into account, we can have at least a couple of questions. The first one is whether this attitude can be positive in some cases. And the second one is towards, in the cases of negative attitude, towards who is that attitude directed? So let's start with the first question. So, many authors claim that irony is always negative. We have one of the main proponents in the audience. But there are others that claim that irony can be positive sometimes. But the problem is that when we try to find out what they mean by positive irony, it is not that clear. And let's see that with an example. So imagine that we have here X, and X is dancing very gracefully, and S says to her, "How clumsy you are." So the question can be, is this ironic? So I'm not going to answer myself, but I am going to let Wilson and Sperber do that for me. And what they claim is that when someone is being clumsy, it is always possible to say ironically, "How graceful." But when someone is being graceful, it takes special circumstances to be able to say ironically, "How clumsy." Such negative ironical comments are only appropriate when some prior doubt about the performance has been entertained or expressed. Okay? So what they say is that instead of this case, we would need something like that. So X has been refusing to go dancing, she has been annoyingly complaining about how clumsy she is, then she starts dancing, and surprise, surprise, she's amazing. And then you can say how clumsy you are to that person. Okay, so then to the question, can the ironic attitude be positive? It seems that even for some of the authors that claim that positive irony exists, then it cannot be positive, the attitude itself. And this so-called positive irony is just a seemingly negative utterance, but there is a negative attitude that is directed towards a previous negative utterance, thought, or expectation. This is something that many people have pointed to. But there are some other authors that believe that you don't need those special circumstances. And the main proponents for that are probably Alba-Juez and Attardo. And what they believe is that the cases where you just see someone dancing gracefully and you say, "How clumsy," those are perfectly ironic and they are fine. And that you can convey a negative or a positive attitude. And that you can have cases where you have mixed evaluative irony. So cases like the one I have described when someone is complaining that they are going to do badly and they perform very well, you have a negative attitude towards this thought that this person had, and a positive one because this person is performing well. So you are praising and criticizing at the same time. Okay, so this is precisely the objective number one of this study, is to determine whether irony can be used to express a positive attitude. And what we assessed were different types of irony that were purely negative, mixed cases, and purely positive ones. And now let's go to the second question. Now I'm going to focus only on the cases of negative attitude. So this question may be whether, towards who that attitude is directed. And for this I have to go a bit into different theories of irony. And the thing is that the view on the potential victims of irony depends very much on the theory you follow. And this is mostly the work I did during my PhD. So let's group theories on two categories. So we have, on the one side, attributive theories of irony. Those are like the Echoic account or the pretense theory. And then we have realist theories of irony that are Grice and many neo-Gricean approaches to irony, and I endorse myself to this second category. So let's start with the first one. And let's start with an example because it's the easiest way. So imagine that we have here Mary and Peter says, it's a lovely day for a picnic. They go for the picnic, it rains, and Mary utters, lovely day for a picnic indeed. So Mary, in this case, is being ironic, and what she would be doing is echoing or attributing to Peter that utterance previous that day. So what those attributive theories share is that the ironic speaker always attributes an utterance or a belief to someone else other than herself at the time of the utterance. So Mary is not saying anything about the world. She's not saying anything about the state of affairs. She's not saying anything about the weather. She is just attributing this and reproducing Peter's previous utterance. And by means of this reproduction of this utterance or thought, she would be criticizing the attributed utterance or thought, or a general expectation, and its attributee. So those are the attributive theories. And on the other hand, we have realist theories of irony. So another example. Imagine that we have here Lily and Simon, and Simon has to do a final exam. And he is very bad at maths. He hasn't studied at all. He's sure it's going to be a mess. He goes to the exam, and surprise, surprise. And then Lily utters, you surely did great on the exam. So for these realist theories, what ironic speakers do is that they talk about the world. So their assertions typically concern a state of affairs in the world. So Lily here would be talking about the fact that Simon performed very badly, and she would be criticizing or mocking that state of affairs the utterance is about, and the person she holds responsible for it. In this case, Simon, because he was the one that did so bad. So this is realist irony. And in this experiment, I was focusing on who that attitude is directed. Not if it was about the world or a previous utterance or thought, but more the victim. So we have that for those attributive theories, the victim will be always the attributee of the ironic utterance, so the source of the echo. I'm going to refer in this talk as the source of the echo for clearance purposes. And we have that for those other theories, the realist ones, irony, the victim of irony can be the responsible of a state of affairs. Is this clear? Okay. Yeah, maybe not that new. So the objective 2 is to determine which are the potential victims of the ironic attitude. And we are going to assess cases of irony in which someone utters an utterance resembling the ironic utterance, cases where someone is responsible for a negative state of affairs, when A and B are the case, so we have both, and cases where we have nor one nor the other. So during the experiments for my PhD, I assessed these two first, so I kind of expect them to work properly, but I wanted to check if you can criticize both or none. And also I wanted to determine to what extent those can be criticized. So let's go to the experimental design, that is the interesting part. So this was an online study, computer-based, and participants had to read 38 self-paced stories, 36 were experimental, and they all involve chat-like conversations. And we had that a speaker S was speaking to A hearer, about a third character B, where character A is the speaker, character A is the potential source of the echo, and B is the responsible for a state of affairs. All the stories had the same structure, so we had first some context, then in the first message we had B's expectation, so responsible of the state of affairs expectation reported. In the second message we had, I'm going to show you an example, so don't worry too much. We have S expectation about the performance, then some time context, and then in the third message the speaker forwards a photo displaying the performance. And then we had the speaker's remark, that is the target sentence, the one that can be ironic, and we are going to focus on that. And then a wrap-up sentence. So, in an example, Elise and Lily are messaging about Simon, a mutual friend who is about to do a final exam. This is how the conversation appears on Elise's phone. So, Simon said he's going to fail his test. The expectation. I'm sure he has studied a lot. He'll do well on the exam. Some days later, Elise forwarded a photo from Simon in the chat. Very badly failed exam. He did well on the exam, and then I have to go. I'll talk to you after class. This last sentence, the wrap-up, is because I am recording the reaction time and the reading time. And if you have that as the last message, you can have not very accurate results because people might reread everything, so you don't have the correct one. So you add this one just in case. So this fourth message, the target sentence, can be of different types. It can be literal or it can be ironic. And in the case of ironic target sentences, we can have, assertions, we can have that the speaker criticizes A, but not B, so the source of the echo, but not the responsible of the state of affairs. Cases where she only criticizes the responsible of the state of affairs, but not the source of the echo, where she criticizes both, and where she criticizes none. So, I am going to jump from one slide to another. This is where it gets a bit messy, so please, if you don't understand something, let me know. So, in the cases of literal criticism or literal praise, those are quite straightforward. So, in literal criticism, everything is negative. So, negative expectation, he'll do badly in the exam, negative expectation, negative event, negative final remark. In the case of praise, everything is positive, expectation, he's going to pass, he's studied a lot, he will do well, he does well, and he did well on the exam. And then in irony, we have a combination of those. So, in the case where you criticize A and B, so the source of the echo and the responsible of the state of affairs, we have that B's expectation is negative and also the performance. The expectation of A is positive and the remark is positive. So, with that, what we have is that, on the one hand, the speaker is criticizing the state of affairs and the responsible, and she's also criticizing A because she is the source of the echo. Okay, so potentially she's criticizing both. In the cases where she criticizes A but not B, we have that B's expectation and performance is positive, but A's expectation is negative, and also the final remark. So, in this case, the speaker can only be criticizing the source of the echo. In the cases where you only criticize B, you cannot be criticizing the source of the echo because she says something else, so you can only be criticizing B because of his performance. And in the cases where you have that they are not criticizing anyone, everything is positive and you have this negative remark. Very similar to the case where someone is dancing gracefully and you just say, how clumsy. Okay? So, these cases also correspond to different types of attitude towards A and B, as you can imagine. So, in the cases where you are criticizing A and B, the attitude towards A is negative, and the attitude towards B is negative. In the case where you are criticizing A and not B, the attitude towards B is supposedly positive. Those are cases like the one when someone had a negative expectation and then they perform well. You can have neutral towards A and negative towards B, and you can have neutral positive in the purely positive instances. You are not convinced at all, but let's go through this. So, let me talk a bit more about this material. So, in order to ensure that people were perceiving this as ironic, and it was not only me in my desk inventing things, we conducted 2 norming studies, and we presented the stories, but without the wrap-up sentence, mostly because it was not important. For the norming studies, I was not rating reading time, so I made it shorter. And after those stories, we asked participants, according to you, how likely is it that the speaker was being ironic or sarcastic with her last message? And they had to rate in a 7-point Likert scale, from extremely unlikely to extremely likely. And in the first one, we tested a set of 44 stories that varied in all those different conditions. We had 32 participants, and what we did is, we coded 5 to 7 as accurate for irony, and 1 to 3 as accurate for literal. And what we did is that in those stories where the accuracy was under 70%, we discarded those. Those were 7. And in the ones that we had 85 to 70, we tried to modify things to make them clearer, especially the images, because sometimes they were not that clear apparently, so we tried to modify them. And then we ran a second norming study. We tested 37 stories, we had another 32 participants, and we excluded 1 story. So we had our remaining 36 stories that had an accuracy of over 83%. So people agreed that those were ironic before we actually conducted the experiment. And the 2 practice ones, what we did was that from the discarded ones, they might have an accuracy that was below 70, but in some of the conditions, they were 100% accurate, mostly because the positive image, sometimes it was not that clear. How can, okay, fine. In one of the stories is about someone that was going to get a haircut. So apparently it's very difficult to know when someone is getting a good haircut, but everyone agreed that this is bad. So we maintain that. After showing each of the stories, We made some questions to participants. The first one was, in your opinion, when Ellie says he did well on the exam, does she really think that Simon did well on the exam? This is the belief question, and I'm going to refer to it as such. And this question was used to determine if participants were accurately understanding that as ironic or not. Because if not, like, if it was ironic, you are supposed to say no, and if it was literal, you are supposed to say yes. And then we ask about the attitude. So, in your opinion, when Ellie says he did well on the exam, what is her attitude towards Simon, responsible of the state of affairs, and what is her attitude towards Lily, potential source of the echo? And they had to rate things in a 5-point Likert scale. And then we added a last question. In your opinion, when Ellie says he did well on the exam, was she trying to be humorous or serious? And they had to rate things in a 4-point Likert scale because we wanted it to be yes, no. And this is the humor question. I have to say that I haven't talked about humor at all yet, and this is because this was a late addition, because I presented this methodology in a workshop, and people were worried, and rightfully so, that people might say that the speaker was expressing a positive attitude because they wanted to say that they were being humorous. So we decided to put those questions apart, and like that we could also observe if different types of irony elicited different humor perceptions. So, the participants. We had 216 adult native British English speakers, half of them were female, and they had no diagnosis of autism, and they were not self-identify as such, because we wanted them to be as accurate as possible for those. And we recruited them through Prolific. That is a platform that they get the participants for you. So, what I analyzed was the accuracy for the belief question, the ratings of the attitude towards B and the attitude towards A, and then the reading times of the target sentence, assertion, let's say. We have the reading times of the wrap-up sentence, and then the reaction times for answering every question. I did generalized multi-level code models in R. Please don't ask me much about that. No, I'm joking. But, so let's go for the results. And I'm going to talk about the results, mostly for just the ironic conditions, but I will mention the contrast between literal and ironic at some points. Are we okay? Okay. But please feel free to interrupt me because, if you want to. So the first objective was to determine whether irony can be used to express a positive attitude. Short answer, yes, it can be used to express positive or mixed attitudes. I'm sorry. And well, I will talk about the models with the second objective. Those are just descriptives. Those are just the results from people, not the models. But I will talk about the models later on. So in the left side, what we have is the ratings for the attitude towards B. We have these stack bars in the plot, and we have the different ironic conditions. I don't know if you can see them properly or not. Okay. So here we have attitude towards B, here attitude towards A, and what we can observe is that irony can be used to express mostly negative attitudes in those, mostly positive, and apparently neutral, what was expected. So yeah, that's good. So we can have this purely positive irony, these mixed cases where you have positive towards one person and negative towards others, and we can have this negative attitude, okay? This negative irony. So the thing is, it seems that we can have positive irony, but normally those come at a cost. And this has been tested before. Positive irony has been in other studies tested, and they said that people recognize them as ironic, but that it had, they were more difficult to understand. So I checked for that. Normally you can see that in the belief question, people are less accurate in those cases, and it elicits higher reading times overall. So I did that, and we expected this to be more difficult. But what we found is a bit the other way around, saying that it's the same but slightly different. It seems that the more negative the attitude towards B is, then the easier it is to process it. So it seems that the main predictor of how easy it was to understand it is that this attitude was more negative. And we can see that in the accuracy in the accuracy for the belief question. So what we have is that this case, that is when you only criticize the responsible of the state of affairs, and that it elicited higher negative ratings, was more accurate than the positive ones. This one is in the middle, so it was not significant. Okay, so those are the results of the models, not just from the descriptives. And then we have that when we analyze the reading times for the target utterance, again, this one, where you are only criticizing the responsible of the state of affairs, that is faster to read. You cannot clearly see them, but in the models it says that it was faster than when you are only criticizing the source of the echo, so those mixed cases. And with the wrap-up sentence, this condition was easier than the purely positive one. So we have that in one way or another, this case where you have the most negative rating, it's easier to understand than in the positive ones or mixed ones. Does it make sense? Okay. So, okay. And then we find another thing with this objective. And it is that irony can be used to express a positive attitude, but why it does so might not be that easy. And the thing is, when we analyze the attitude towards B ratings, those are very clear. Those are very beautiful. We have here that in the literal praise you are mostly praising, in the literal you are mostly criticizing, in irony you have half and half, and in the ironic ones you have that you might be mostly praising or mostly criticizing. Those are quite normal because obviously if you are being, well obviously, but if you are being ironic you have more risk of being misunderstood. So those are people that even though it was supposed to be praising, they still judge things as being critical. But the problem is that when we analyzed the attitude towards A, we have this. And this is not what we expected. We expected here mostly neutral, so the gray one, and here something like this. And here we expected that when you are criticizing the source of the echo, we would have negative, but the other ones we expected mostly neutral attitudes. And we have a lot of positive ones. So, why? My tentative explanation for that is that it might be due to the fact that the speaker is agreeing with A, So that in cases like this, for instance, someone say like, he's going to do well, and then he performed well, and this person is agreeing. So people are perceiving that there is a positive attitude somehow. You can disagree with me, and if you have a better solution, I will be very happy to hear it. And in the case of irony, I think that at the explanation, there is an explanation by Clark and Gerrig, and is that when you are being ironic, what you are doing is that you are creating this inner circle where you are like criticizing someone else, and you have this feeling of group, and it kind of fits this picture because only in this one, where the only person that can be criticized is the source of the echo, is the only one where we don't have that many positive ratings. But those are very tentative. I am very puzzled by this.
Yolanda, maybe can you put an example of a case in which you didn't expect the positive rating and you got a positive rating, so it's clear for us?
I didn't analyze case by case, but I can give you...
The kind of cases. So the fourth case, for example, non-A and B. Yeah.
Okay.
Which examples are those?
Those are the examples where you only criticize the responsible of the state of affairs. So Simon is going to do badly. Simon said he's not going to perform well. Then A says, yeah, he's horrible at maths, he's going to do it very badly. He fails, and then the person says, yeah, he did great.
And people say that some people find positive attitudes on that.
Towards the hearer. Like the person that said, he's very bad at maths.
Yeah.
So I think that in those cases, they are finding that they are agreeing with them, and that's what gets that positive attitude. And that's why in this one, that is the only one where they clearly, well, in this one too, but in this one you have this explanation of inner circle.
They are joking about the other one.
Yeah, even if they were wrong. But in this one, there is nothing that can mitigate that, and I think that's why we only find that we don't have that many positive ratings in this one.
Makes sense. That one was A and B was
Only with when you criticize the source of the echo.
Okay, so you criticize the one who says Simon is going to do well.
No, when they say Simon is going to do badly, he does well, and it's like, oh, he did badly.
Okay.
So you can only criticize this person. And you are disagreeing with them. It's the only explanation I can think of, but okay. So, to wrap this up, for the objective number 1, it seems that yes, irony can be used to express positive or mixed attitudes, but the more negative the attitude towards B is, the easier it is to process it, and that it might be hard to discern why the speaker expresses this positive attitude in some cases. It might not be just because they are praising, but for some other reasons other than that. There's a clear limitation of this, but I have to acknowledge it. Okay, so let's go to objective number 2. That was to determine which are the potential victims of the ironic attitude. And, well, let me focus first on one and then the other. And in this one, we find that in the cases where you are supposed to criticize B, we have this group. And in the cases where you are not criticizing B, we have this other group. And those clearly differ in the models. And here we have that in the cases where you are not supposed to criticize A, clearly differ from this one, and those 3 differ from cases where you are only criticizing the source of the echo. Okay? So, yeah, and those are significant in the models too. So, it seems that you can be criticizing only the responsible of the state of affairs, so only B, but not A because this is positive. You can criticize only the source of the echo, here mostly negative and here very positive. You can be criticizing none and have positives in both sides, but it's not that clear that you can criticize both, or at least not to the same extent. Yeah, here we can see that those are mostly neutral, and that was puzzling for me because I really expected that to be similar to this one. But it seems that there is a preference whenever we have both options to have to perceive this negative attitude towards the responsible of the state of affairs much more than the source of the echo. This is not great news for the Echoic account, but we'll deal with that later. So to show this in a different way, so what I did with the coding of the results is that I rated very negative ratings with -2, negatives with -1, neutral with 0, +1, and very +2. And we can see in this plot where I compare attitudes towards both. This is the neutral line. Okay, so we are supposed to have here positive and here negative. We can have that in not A and not B happy. Everything is positive. Where you are only criticizing B, this is very negative and this is very positive. You can have that you are only criticizing A, which is less, but you are praising B. But in these ones, this is not behaving as we expected. We were supposed to see those two together in here, but data is data and they do something else. So yeah, it seems that when you have both, there is this preference to say that the negative attitude is directed towards the responsible of the state of affairs. So yeah, this is it. And then the humor question. Well, I told you that this was kind of an added thing. And we wanted to determine with it whether the type of irony affects the humor perception. And this was very cool. Well, as expected, irony was perceived as highly humorous in comparison with literal counterparts, but it seems that the negative attitude facilitates humor perception in all cases. So, what we have is that, again, in cases where we have not A and B, so where you are only criticizing the responsible of the state of affairs, people rate the assertions as more humorous than in cases of where you are only criticizing the source of the echo. We have a difference there. And the very curious thing is that it happens, we have an effect in the literal stimuli too. So we have that all those three differ, and obviously they rate as more humorous the ironic assertions, but they rate as more humorous the literal criticism ones than the literal praise ones. So it seems that the more critical someone is, the more humorous it's perceived, which makes sense because besides this, well, there are like two main, I should have put references here, but you have that. It might be the contrast in irony that is what makes this humor component arise, and we do have that. But there are some other theories that those are the superiority theories of irony that believe that this is this criticism that facilitates also humor. That yeah. So it seems that they are not completely off point here, and it also reflects in the literal stimuli. So, take-home messages. It seems that irony can be used to express positive and mixed evaluative attitudes, that we can have purely positive irony with no criticism at all, and those are cases that are perceived as ironic. It seems that the stronger the negative stance towards the responsible of the state of affairs, the easier to process the irony. And it seems that it may be hard to discern why we have, like, what that positive attitude reflects. On the other hand, with the second objective, it seems that the negative stance of irony can be directed towards the responsible of the state of affairs, the source of the echo, or none. But when we have both, there is a preference for this negative attitude towards the responsible of the state of affairs. And at last, irony is perceived as more humorous, as everyone expected, but it seems that the negative stance towards the responsible of the state of affairs make people perceive assertions as more humorous, both in literal and ironic assertions. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I asked you a couple of very stupid questions. From someone not scared to say difficulty to process irony. First question is, how did you detect what the people you were testing were so-called normal people? And then you didn't got some other problem like autism, Sperber, etc. How can you choose them?
Okay, I'm going to repeat the question so it gets recorded. So, like, how I make sure that the participants weren't diagnosed with autism or with any other condition. I have to trust them, first of all, but they answer that question in Prolific. So when you enroll in Prolific, when you sign up, you have to answer many different questions about many different things like procedence or your first language, socioeconomic status, and many other things. And you also report if you have any diagnosis for anything, like, well, not anything, but for autism or dementia or many other conditions. They are quite long to answer all those questions, and they only get selected if they explicitly said no to those.
Why the economic level?
Yeah, it is. Well, I didn't check for that. No. Because when you test, you want as diverse of a sample as possible. So there are some options in Prolific where you get a representative sample. So it means that you get people from different socioeconomic backgrounds and half and half men, women, and like in all, the broader spectrum you can get. Because if not, at the end, like it's what happened with many studies in the 80s, that you only test 20-year-old kids that go to your class. So, but.
Am I right if I understand now from your talk when one is processing positive attitude, you're more cognitively costly, one processing, the basic idea is you process the literal meaning, after you got the humorous, can be, you got the negative, irony, and after to process what it is a positive irony. It's more cognitively costly, and if you're reading, eyes reading, etc., did you detect that?
Okay, so the question is if it is more cognitively demanding to get positive irony. Yeah. I am just repeating, so it gets recorded. So yeah, it is. But I think that it was very revealing for me the fact that is not only that positive irony is harder, but that very negative irony is easier. That is what I found, like what I was trying to reflect with, sorry. Where is this? Yeah, with this, like, we don't find, like, it might seem that there is not that much of a difference, but this is a bit bigger, and we have a difference between this irony where you are only criticizing the responsible of the state of affairs and the positive one, and we have exactly the same results here. And also, I think this is what makes people perceive it as more humorous. The easier it is to process, then the easier it is to get the humor, the easier it is to get those sort of things.
So from the humor to the positive, it's easier to, namely, someone processing a positive irony, she is more inclined to consider it as humor than to irony?
Good question. Well, the question is whether people would consider cases of positive irony as humorous but not as ironic. I would say that they are perceiving them as ironic. Well, first because of the pretest, the Norman studies that we did, people agreed that those were ironic mostly. But then because if we go to those, okay, we are going to very small differences because those are adult, neurotypical, like we have to take into account that the bad part of recruiting through prolific is that it's people that are able to sign up in this platform and decide that they want to earn some money doing experiments. So, but they are very accurate, way above chance. So those are like, I don't know, 80, something like that, accurate for these ones, and they are they seem to be accurate for the attribution of the negative attitudes or the positive ones.
Thank you. Having said that, learn a lot. Thanks a lot.
No, thank you.
Enjoy it.
Thank you.
You? Yeah, thank you very much. It was super interesting. I think that my question makes sense, but I'm not sure. Can you go back to the slide where you can see the graph?
Okay, contrasting A and B.
Yeah. Well, maybe...
I shouldn't put that many effects.
Okay. There are supposed to be cases where the speaker, the source of the echo, is not being criticized. Only the...
Yeah.
Only B, right?
Yeah,
So,
this one.
Yeah. So in these cases, there is a positive, there is positive attitude reported towards the speaker.
Towards the hearer, the source of the echo. Yeah.
And so in these cases, the worry is whether, maybe I'm wrong, but whether the notion of positive is being used in the same way in all cases. Because sometimes positive seems to be used to convey praise, but in these cases, there is no praise, there is only agreement. Or not,
Yeah.
or I'm missing something.
No, that's exactly it. That's what I wanted to say.
And I mean, because it's kind of different to say that irony can be used positively to convey, to praise, and another thing just to convey agreement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to repeat the question now, even if it's a bit late. But that in cases like these ones where you are only criticizing the responsible of the state of affairs, you are reporting a positive attitude towards A, but you are not praising A. So it seems that the positive is not used for praise, but for something else. And I totally agree. I think that that's what I wanted to express in, like, when I was talking about objective one, that it's very hard to discern why we have this positive attitude. Because in the cases where we are asking which is the attitude towards B, this is very clear. And we can see in the results that it's praise or criticism. And we see that in the literal ones, and we see that in the ironic ones. But that's why I was so puzzled with, sorry. That's why I was so puzzled with this. This didn't make sense at the beginning, because what we would expect in those instances is to have neutral, this kind of thing, and here negative, neutral. And yeah, and we have something like this. And I think that's why, like, maybe it's the agreement, but then it's a...
But then, because I'm not getting all, because, when you conclude that irony can be used to express positive attitude, you are, I suppose, mainly relying on cases where it is identified as, positive conveying praise. So you have cases
Yeah.
where what is being conveyed with positive is praise.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would like, in the cases where I was when I was saying that irony can be used to express positive attitude, I should have been explicit. That you can use this positive attitude to praise when we have attitude towards B, but in those cases, but we have, in a sense, we have positive attitude too. Like, I think it's now our work to figure out why or give an explanation. Now we have this result where I have to give an explanation of why I think that's the case. But yeah, you're totally right. I have to be very specific about that. Thank you.
Yolanda? Yeah. Thank you very much, Yolanda. It was very clarifying. I have little details that I'm not very convinced about, or maybe I didn't get them rightly. I was worried, like Inigo, about this positive attitude, because I don't want to lie, basically. But I was thinking, did you check, so do you assess in the experiment that there is positive irony, or it is the pre-experiment that assess that? Because you put some examples that were not critical, like obviously, because there was nothing to be critical about. And the pre-experiment design, the results decided that they were ironic. So it is in that moment that we are deciding that there are some ironies that are not negative.
Okay. Repeating the question. It seems that it's not in this main study that I assess that there are positive cases of irony that are positive, but that I assess that positive irony is perceived as ironic in the norming previous studies. Yes and no. It's good to have good material, but the norming studies, you cannot really rely on them, because participants are, in general, a mix of very people pleasers, and they don't want to do badly. And you kind of give them the answer in the question. That's why you can, when you are doing an experiment, you cannot ask directly, is this ironic? Because people now know what they are supposed to do. So I can rely on those results in order to create the material, but not to determine if those are, and like, I cannot robustly say people say that this is ironic or not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. The difficult part to understand for me is that how people can call ironic this sort of example. So this is a problem for me. Not that people later on in the experiment rate the attitudes, because I think that the agreement thing goes for the, explains the positive sense of the attitude on these things, but how this could be viewed as ironic. So I think.
But that's so because you are just assuming that
Okay.
No, but I do have problems with the example also because it's in a chat, so it's written and you don't have context. I was reading it like, I don't know if I would take that as ironic. And then I have no idea if I would think I am being positive or negative towards A or B. I don't know, I would need more context. I would need gesture, so I would need to know what's the relation between ILCLI and Sam and all of that in order to know if she's being critical or not. I have no idea. If you ask me, I would say I have no idea. Who are these people? What is the relation? Like it would seem to me that I need more information. I was wondering if that's a problem. Like you know, when you write, and if you don't have context and if you don't have tone and gesture, I just see he's going to do well, bad. Oh, he did well. Yeah, I assume that's irony because it's a typical case. It's just a standard bad. But I don't know if that's good or not. Is Simon her boyfriend? So is it an ex-boyfriend, so she hates him? Is it an enemy? I don't know. I don't know if she's been negative or not. So that was one of, I kept, and I guess my question was a bit like, I mean, she's agreeing with A, so that's positive. She's disagreeing, so that's negative. But that's just agreeing or disagreeing, right? And because A says he did well, he does bad, or whatever, and she says she did well. So is that positive or just? So that was my doubt. Like, yeah, in as much as you agree, you're positive, but I don't know. I guess that's a limitation. That's a problem.
Okay, trying to summarize the question. No. Now it's my job to summarize for the camera. No. So the problem is that since there is no context in the stories, it seems that it might be difficult to determine if the attitude is negative or not. And it seems that in the cases of attitude towards A, it points to this thing of agreeing or not agreeing. Decisions had to be made. And also the problem if we start putting other cues is that then what you might test is the effect that those cues have instead of different types of irony. So that's why we wanted to avoid them at all costs. And I know that they sound a bit artificial. In fact, you might be surprised. Those have a lot of this is way far up. But the thing is that we did say that they were all friends. That was in the context. We did give some context that somehow this person had to do this, is that enough? I don't know. Maybe not, but this is the best we can do. And we also tried very much to avoid all the clues, and that was all the cues, and that was tough. We tried to avoid hyperbole as much as we could. At some point there is a bit of it because he did well, he passed, and he failed makes no sense. So you have to have a little bit of it. We were discussing a lot whether to use exclamation marks. Apparently for native British, English British speakers, that pointed literal instead of, crazy thing.
Teenagers here too. If you put an explanation, if you put a point, it's like you're insulting somebody in a WhatsApp. The exclamation is like old-fashioned. It's like you're old. You have to, for instance, Gerrig. That's the way you have to do it. My friends have teenagers. Exclamation marks, it's like, and the point is like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, well, for me too, a bit, but yeah. So we wanted to avoid all those, so that's why we decided to put just the thing, no points, no exclamation marks, no emojis, no Also because I have the feeling that I had some ideas of it, but obviously I am, my first language is Spanish. I am the age that I am, so like I am not 13, I am not 40. Like it's very difficult to do those things that change so much depending on, on which cultural category you belong to.
Does the perception change if it's a woman or a man at age?
Yeah, it does. Well,
because you know this thing about a woman, she's a bitch, or she's a wrong or something.
there are some, well, this is curious because, well, in this study, it doesn't. And I know that for sure because this year there was a master's student that was working in this project. So she used the data. And she wanted to see if there was any difference in the participants' sex/gender. And also she checked the one of the speaker. And she found no differences there. There are some studies that say that there are, but she didn't find any. And that's why everything is counterbalanced. Like, and we have half and a half of female and male participants because we wanted to make sure that she could do her analysis. And here we don't have that.
Was the data as well balanced? So the responses were half women?
Yeah. 108 female, 108 males. We only had one that I don't know how to, because they have one answer in prolific, and then to make sure that the data in prolific is correct, I asked them their sex, gender, and then they said non-binary, so but it's only one, so not representative.
So the responses, the characters were...
Yeah, we did that in 2 steps. We had sex of the speaker, sex gender of A, and we have that counterbalance in all the stories. And then we had the same with sex of the speaker and the person they are talking about. I could not do it with the 3 at the same time because if not, I would need 300,000 stimuli, and it was torture enough for participants to do something this long. So, yeah.
So if I got you right, there is no gender difference.
We did not find any gender difference in here.
Another question, completely aside, because you say what in your experiment you try to get, I use normally now, without connotation, try to find cognitively normal people. I think what your test could be also be applied to find, without having at the beginning, any trying to figure out who are the normally cognitive or whatever you mean, to test whether people are not cognitively normal.
So the question is if this can be used.
I think it could be, the impression I got, it could be used to find out where people got Sperber, autism, etc.
Yeah. So the question is whether
Without
this.
taking a pre-selection. Everybody, and after you may find what, find 5% or whatever. So not cognitively normal, so to speak. And if you go down this way, you may find some gender difference. Because from what I learned studying a bit about autism, there is a big gender difference. Men are more. Thanks.
Okay. So what you are saying is whether this study can be used somehow to point out, I'm not saying diagnose, if someone is autistic or not neurotypical. And if we did that, maybe we could find gender differences in there. Tricky. Because
It was not your aim to
Yeah.
figure out that.
No, and
You expanded to do.
I am not that sure because obviously you are. Well, I think this is a personal thing because many of the tests that are used to that use a lot of stories that sometimes are ironic, but then you cannot, like, sometimes it gets kind of circular that they have problems with non-literal meaning, so that's why, well, that's part of the diagnosis. So then we say that because of this they cannot understand literal language, you know. But besides that, in the PhD I did test autistic participants, and yeah, with kind of those, like, we didn't have that they were talking about someone else. It was the hearer was the same person that performed the action. So we could have A and not B, and not A and B. We had those two, and I didn't find that many differences there that I would expect. Obviously, I was not testing for purely positive irony or anything like that. And regarding the gender differences, and also in the case of the study I conducted before, they were quite accurate. And they were quite accurate. And the thing is that, what it seemed is that they somehow, they have some compensatory mechanisms to understand that there is a contrast there between the state of affairs and the utterance, and then that this is irony. Regarding the gender effects in there, I have one close friend and colleague that she's precisely doing that, gender differences in autism in irony. And so far it's not that clear. So yeah, I am not that sure that those can be used for that.
I think it's a question because
Yeah, no, it's very...
You can look into autism, etc. Mainly from the study of Baron Cohen, one of the big guys. And say that from all his studies, there is a big difference between about 5 autistic for a male and just 1 female.
Well, those might be misdiagnosed, but well... no, that these differences in ratio for autism between women and men might be misdiagnoses, and yeah.
Wonderful too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the talk. More than a question, is more about the human part. I was thinking, because of how it, because probably there is no other way to design the experiment, that how it is present, it has the form of like a joke. When you have a scene, you have a thing, and then you have the punchline. So maybe the humorous effect can be due to the structure of the thing itself, because the person is presented with one thing, and we know that dynamic thing that when someone presents you one thing, then you have an expectation of one thing is going to happen, and then the comedian breaks the expectation with the punchline, no? Maybe the humorous effect in all cases come from that we know how jokes work, and it has something to do with that.
Maybe, but you mean in all cases, like in the literal ones too?
No, I was thinking maybe in some ones no.
Because, well, let's see if I can find in this ocean of slides.
When you mentioned that the reading times in some cases is shorter, maybe due to how it works, the thing, maybe you are expecting something to happen, and in some cases, see what you are expecting to happen that is a negative thing, because we are used to irony being negative. I am
positive, you have to rethink because you are expecting something negative, and then well, it came this idea from there.
Okay. Okay. So you mean that only applies then for when you have the contrast, so only for the ironic cases?
In most cases it would be.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, and I think that's what incongruity theories of humor would say, that what you have is that the humor in irony comes from the contrast between a state of affairs and, well, a contrast and yeah, the ironic assertion. But I do agree, like I think that's why we have these differences between literal criticism and irony. But I think that in a sense, these superiority theories that say that the humor comes from the fact that you are putting yourself over others and that has a humorous component, I think that they are not off track, because in the literal ones we have this humorous rating too. And in those ones we don't have this contrast and we don't have the punchline effect. I think that this works, and obviously this is huge, so it has the biggest effect might be that. But then there is some of the negative component that plays a role in there. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a worry, I think. Yolanda, when I saw the item, I think I didn't see these items before.
Which item? Like
you put one of them, I don't know.
the exam one, okay.
The thing is, Yolanda,
Okay.
you distinguished, like, as it was very clear, who is the source of the echo, so who is the speaker echoing with the utterance, and then who is the responsible of the state of affairs. But as you introduce what the state of affairs is about, the first line read, Simon said that. So this is not like a reported speech that someone can understand as an utterance there. So Simon said something, and maybe when you finish with the ironic utterance, someone can understand that you are echoing Simon. Am I making
You might, but that's why I introduce B's, so the responsible of the state of affairs, expectation that always corresponds with the performance, if it was positive or negative, because I wanted to avoid people perceiving that they are criticizing B because he is the source of the echo. Let me explain it. So in a case like where you are only criticizing A, what you have is Simon says that he's going to do well, that he has to study a lot. I'm sure that's not true. He sucks at math, whatever. And then he performs well, and then you have, oh, he did very badly. So you cannot criticize B because he cannot be the source of the echo. Like in all cases, I control for that. So I think I'm not explaining myself very clearly.
So they cannot understand that the utterance is echoing Simon's reported utterance? No. Okay, so that's checked.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I control for that.
Okay. And then something like more general, we are not worried because every irony that we are using is attributive, because we don't have like realistic irony, pure realistic irony. So it can be understood that the results are applied just to irony when there is an echo. Attributive. All the examples or items are attributive.
No.
We always have, he is saying something, and the last utterance is, so there is someone who is worried or not. Always. So we don't have any case in which, you have an F, that's a good exam. No,
Okay.
we always have someone talking about the exam beforehand. So
Okay.
there are expectations or utterances that are echoing.
Okay.
We are not worried about that, Yolanda?
Okay, so Joanna is worried sorry, no. That, that all the instances are attributive because we are, in all cases, like reporting previous expectations, and we don't have just a case where we have a state of affairs and just the ironic utterance. I think that we have that not A and B is realist. In not A and B, you have a positive expectation of someone, a negative. Sorry. But you have the expectations that don't match the ironic utterance. So you might have, we all have expectations about things all the time, but the thing is that we cannot attribute the content of the ironic utterance to anyone in that conversation, not towards A, not towards B. So, like in that one, is everyone thinks bad, like bad. It turns out badly, and you say, "Oh, he did great." So, what I understand is that for that to be attributive, we would need someone to expect. You can have this thing that, no, it's the general expectation that people perform well in exams. But then you cannot justify why they rate things like that in the attitude towards me. And we have massively negative responses there. And I think that they cannot explain that.
I can understand that for critical examples. I still believe that maybe in positive examples, the previous context that is helps for an attribution or an expectation helps the example to be felt as ironic, because we don't have any example like someone dancing and, oh, you are a bad dancer and she's very good. We don't have that.
But I think that not A and not B are very similar. They say like, oh, he's going to do well. Yeah, I've studied a lot. He gets up A++. And then it's like, oh, you did badly. Like, it's kind of the same. And I think that the fact that we have expectations and that I explicitly have that, because, yeah, it has to be, everything has to be like clean. But I think that it doesn't affect because those cannot be understood as echoic.
So this is not a criticism, it's more like a very general worry, and I would like to know your opinion. It's about experimental philosophy and methodology in general in this context, and I was wondering whether it's something that worries you to some extent, or whether you discuss it at some point. To what extent it is, how would I say, we can trust on people with no expertise in these issues when it comes to identifying what is irony. I think you mentioned something like that, particularly when it might be in contradiction with what experts identify as irony, because I take it that in discussing other concepts we wouldn't go to experimental. I think maybe there's people doing that, but I think to understand what is justice, there maybe it's not that appealing to make this sort of experimental work to identify which cases constitute justice and which not. But maybe it does not affect very much in this case, I don't know, because maybe you are not actually here endorsing a view on the extension, right, of irony based on these results. Just general worry on experimental methodology in this context. Just to know your opinion.
Just like Williams.
Yeah, he has done some experimental philosophy. But well, I think it's very general. It's not in particular about this case, but just to know what.
So the question, very interesting, thank you, is to what extent we can rely on data like this in order to determine what irony is or how it works, and if we need to go to the general people to establish the concept itself. Like, is this more or less? Okay.
I think it's very useful. I mean, it's just like a discussion that is going on, but I think it's very useful the work you just.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that irony, in a sense, differs from something like justice in the sense that it is very common. It is something that everyone uses, and that we have very intuitive opinions on that. Maybe it doesn't give us, the truth of what irony is or not, but it helps us, understand what people refer to when they use the term. And this is something that they use a lot. Like, I think it's like 7% of common conversation is ironic, which is fair amount. So I think it's useful to have these ideas on how people consider irony or
Just to follow up with this thing, I think we do have that worry, but not only with experimental pragmatics, but in pragmatics in general. Because maybe with justice, what you want to clarify, among other things, is what justice should be, or how we should understand justice. But with irony and all these natural language phenomena, what we want to explain, allegedly, is what irony is. Yeah, because irony exists. Like, we use the term, like, it's like thousands of years that we are calling things ironic. And we don't want to be the expert people that says, no, you are using the term badly. So this is irony, and no. Allegedly, we are trying to explain how it is that people call ironic. That's problematic because then when we start doing pragmatics, we want to classify things and we want to say how we should, and maybe we want to be able to say that people uses that wrongly.
You are like the right.
Yeah, totally. So we want to explain the use, but then we want to make it like more normative. So there is like a tension there, but it's not the same case as deciding what justice is or whatever. We always start from some general use of the term and some general use of the concept. But it's not a problem of experimental pragmatics, it's a problem of pragmatics like more in general.
I think there is still a gap there between how trying to identify how people use it
and the experiment.
then what people report.
Yeah.
Because one thing would be the RAE doing, let's see how people is using this term, and then the other thing would be to ask people to give definitions and take this as data.
Yeah, totally. And with the data, we are worried also about, well, at least I'm worried, but we cannot go to people's lives and put like a little video camera and see how they are ironic in normal life. So we have to do these things, I guess. No? Yeah, we would like to do the other thing. That would be interesting, but...